I'm here in sunny California next to the 2022 Mazda MX-30. This is the first electric vehicle from Mazda, and initially it was supposed to have a rotary range extender. It was supposed to herald the return of the rotary engine. However, things have changed and it is here in the United States, well, in California, for a starting price of just over $33,000. But it only has 100 miles of range. Is that enough to be competitive in today's marketplace, or is it just a compliance car? We're here to find out. Up front, Mazda maintains its most traditional design, though it is a bit more aggressive. It does have angel eye headlights and a much more pronounced headlight than on previous models, including the CX-30. Those LED headlights have automatic high beams as standard, along with a full suite of safety features, including lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control, and an excellent 360-degree surround view camera. The rear 3/4 angle is the most aggressive styling on the MX-30, including the silver roof contrasting this fantastic red paint. One downside to this extremely stylish roof, however, is the rear 3/4 view out the side. When you're checking your blind spots, it's nearly impossible to do it by eyes. You have to rely on the blind spot monitoring of the vehicle. And as we know, sometimes that can false. The MX-30 is a 5-door crossover. However, if you look at the side, you'll notice that there's only 2 doors that seem to be there. Where are the other 2, you might ask? Well, the front door is open like a traditional crossover or sedan or literally any other car. However, the rear doors are very reminiscent of the RX-8 as they open rearwards. That means that it's easier for people to get in and out of the rear seats because there is no B-pillar in the way obstructing usability. However, it does mean that the front doors have to be open first. So if you do have a child in the back seat who might have to use the restroom, they're going to have to wait for the front passenger to climb out of the vehicle before they can run inside and use the facilities. So it's an interesting trade-off for space. However, it does mean that you do have to be a little more conscious of when you open the doors, because if you shut the front door first, the rear door won't shut. Now we're going to experience the MX-30, where Mazda claims is its home turf, which is out on the canyon roads surrounding the Los Angeles area. This vehicle is a front-wheel drive based crossover, which front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, you would definitely think that like Mazda would like to go for rear-wheel drive in an electric car. So it's a little weird to see it in front-wheel drive, but if you check out our Polestar 2 front-wheel drive write-up and video, you'll find that really it doesn't matter quite as much in one of these vehicles. That being said, acceleration is fine. I actually think the Leaf probably accelerates a tiny bit quicker. The more high-end vehicles, the Polestar, definitely a Tesla single motor, is much quicker to 60 miles an hour than what this Mazda is and will be. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. I mean, it's enough speed to kind of get out of its own way. It is very easy on the highway to hit the car's top speed, possibly if you were in Mexico or in a place that doesn't have a speed limit. But it is fairly quiet at highway speeds. It is fairly quiet sort of here on this back road. I'm not sure if the microphone is picking it up. It's kind of hard to tell, but Mazda actually pumps in some dynamic engine noise, similar to like what Ford does with the Mach-E and some of the other electrics. They try to synthesize. It's not really an engine note per se, but they try to synthesize something to kind of add to the sensation of speed. Objectively, this isn't a bad car. The 100 miles of range means they only have to fit a 33 an odd number, 33.5, 33.8. We'll have the exact number below the screen right now for you. But that's the kilowatt hour battery pack. So because they can do that, they can actually keep the weight down in the car, which does mean this car feels lighter than its competition when you start to give it a little bit of a hustle. It also means that they don't have to make the suspension as stiff, and they don't have to focus as much on lugging around all of the extra weight that the battery brings to the table. So between that and some other lightweighting methods, the car's not too bad. I don't know if somebody buying this car is going to hustle up a canyon road. If they're going to stick with a Mazda to do that, they're still going to buy the gas-powered Miata. There are better sort of hustling cars too. I think the Polestar is a great example. Even though that's priced at, with the dual motor and the performance version, nearly double what this vehicle costs. So yeah, that's a lot of money. But in this sort of $33,000 to $35,000 range, pre-tax incentive, the Mini Cooper SE comes to mind, which has, when we first tested it, it had 110 miles of range, 115 miles of range. They've since upped that to about 130 miles of range. So realistically, that 130 miles of range is a little bit more than what this Mazda offers. But if you want an inexpensive, very fun to drive electric, I think the Mini is a good way to go. But if you need a little bit more space, this dynamically is pretty good. I'm really happy with the way that it handles, given the front-wheel drive architecture, given the lower horsepower numbers, given sort of some of the trade-offs that come with the car. Some things that I really like just through the general driving. When I first climbed in the car, all the driver assist functions were turned on. There is one massive sort of like button in the corner that you press, turns all the driver aids off, so that it's not bugging you for lane centering and stuff like that. But it does come with all of Mazda's advanced driving functions. So it'll do lane centering, it'll do adaptive cruise control. The forward and rear camera systems are extremely high resolution, very crisp and clear to see. The actual infotainment screen, which I can't show you right now because I'm driving, is bright, it's colorful, it's a little tiny. They take this sort of like landscape approach and they kind of push it a little bit farther up on the cluster. So it's not a touchscreen. So you got to use kind of a little bit of a wonky steering kind of drive control thing for it. It's okay. Like, the system itself works well. It's quick to respond. It supports Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. The stereo sounds fine. It's not a high-end premium unit, but sounds pretty good through a lot of the trash music that I like to listen to. And I mean, some of the materials, I'll kind of walk you through a little bit of the materials sort of as we're driving, just sort of as we sort of experience. I like there's some padding sort of where my right knee would normally rest. I like that it's padded there. I've been in some EVs where that is not padded as a way to sort of save a little bit of money. So I like that it's padded there. There's some materials that feel great. I mean, the steering wheel feels great. The instrument cluster is very Mazda, which means it's clear, relatively easy to see, understand, use. Not a lot of extra information, not a lot of customization. Same with the heads-up display. It gives you the information you want without too much extra fuss or, muss. Some materials I'm not quite sure about, such as this sort of material over here on the door panel. It is soft to the touch, but it kind of almost feels like packaging material that you would get from like inside an iPad box or something like that. It's weird. I'm kind of curious on where they sourced that. It's not bad. It feels like some material that's used in some tech products kind of thing, which is maybe what they're going for. All the climate control functions are controlled through a center touchscreen, a la higher-end Audi, Porsche. It works okay. It's responsive enough, though it does kind of take a real solid button press to adjust the climate settings. If you just like brush your finger across it, it's not going to pick it up. So sometimes you got to hit it, give it a good solid jab. Drive modes, there's various levels of regen that you can control through the paddles on the steering wheel. I do like customization in regen. There are cars that only offer sort of like one regen kind of mode or two. That's fine for most people, but one thing that we experienced with our Tesla sort of long term is in the standard regen mode in the winter in snow, sometimes that can be a little too much regen and it'll actually kind of almost break traction. But then there's like, it's either that or this like very little regen, and I like something in between. So Hyundai does a good job at sort of giving you multiple levels of regen. This Mazda gives you like 4 settings. So there is a lot of customization there, though even in the full regen setting, which I can put it in now, it does a lot of regen, but it won't necessarily bring the car to a complete stop. So it's not truly a one-pedal driving experience the way that Nissan's one-pedal is, or some of the other systems out there. One last thing that I'd like to kind of hit on is the actual braking. So because it's an electric car, I mean, everything's electric, including the actual brake assist system. So it is a brake-by-wire system, so there's just a spring, kind of a button, kind of determines, and the computer sorts everything out. The computer is also constantly mixing the amount of regenerative braking power and friction braking power. So there isn't necessarily a set, oh, you push the pedal this much, you're into the friction brakes, you press it a little bit harder, you know, you're really hitting the friction brakes, or if you press it light, oh, it's just going to do regen. Computer's kind of sorting that out as you go along. And Mazda claims it gives you a bit more of a natural experience, and it can vary from what sort of drive mode you're in. Now, I don't necessarily like the idea of the braking system constantly changing, because I actually don't feel like that would be too linear. But in practice, sort of down this particular canyon road that we're on, it does feel pretty progressive. It feels pretty natural. It's really hard to tell through your foot where it switches from just regen to the friction brakes. And part of that, though, is just because there isn't actually a brake cable attached. So the computer doesn't articulate that weird pedal feeling from the transition from regen to friction brakes. So it actually ends up feeling a bit more natural. And the computer does a fairly good job at sorting that out. Probably more information than you ever wanted to know about braking, but the car handles it pretty well. It's a little disappointing that this is going to be, in its first model year, a one-state only car, and there's only going to make so many of them. And there's a little bit of a shame, because I think that if they sold more of them, you know, they would be able to possibly even lower the price some, quantities of scale and stuff like that. So you really won't see too many of these out here on the road. But if you do see one out on a canyon, know the guy's having fun, or the girl, or whoever is driving is really probably enjoying themselves. You'll probably be able to keep up with them, because there isn't a lot of straight line oomph. But in the handling department, it does pretty well. So is it a Mazda? I would argue that it is very much a modern day interpretation of what Mazda is trying to do. The CX-5 drives pretty well. The CX-3 is known to also handle pretty well. CX-30 is kind of a good little mix of that sort of crossover, that smaller crossover, but yet sporty kind of drive. This really feels a lot like a CX-30. They do share a platform, just with some extra batteries and stuff added in it. One big thing, though, to kind of take away in the driving experience is I like that there's the safety features, the blind spot monitoring, the driver and passenger mirrors are pretty good size. All the driver assist cameras and stuff takes up a good amount of windshield space, which is a little bit annoying because they have to actually put the rearview mirror a little bit lower. Actually, when I had to mount this camera, I had to mount it a little bit farther away just because there isn't enough real estate to do it. But when it comes to visibility, the biggest complaint I have, and it is pretty noticeable, is the rear three-quarter view out. Like if you're turning your head to check your blind spot, it's all just dark. And it's because the way the roof is raked with sort of some design elements they choose to make this vehicle look different than the CX-30, I think is actually a little bit of a poor choice, because it is very difficult to check your blind spot. You have to rely too much on the blind spot sensors, which work pretty well, but if you've ever driven a car with blind spot monitoring, you know that sometimes it'll false, or sometimes it won't pick it up. So I would really like a little bit more rear three-quarter visibility sort of over each shoulder. The view out the back is actually great. That's a fairly good sized window, much bigger than something you get out of the Polestar, and more in line with what you'd get out of like a Tesla Model Y. So a little bit of a mix. That would be my biggest takeaway. My biggest change would be find some way to give me some more visibility there. But otherwise, it's a solid Mazda driving experience. I think it delivers what it's supposed to do on the tin, and I look forward to seeing where Mazda goes with electrification. Are they going to focus more on driving dynamics overall and make range sort of an afterthought to keep weight and stuff down? Or is this just sort of like a, hey, let's test the waters and see how we're doing? The Mazda MX-30 handles exactly the way you would expect, because it handles like a modern Mazda. Unfortunately, with only 100 miles of real-world range, it has to be relegated to commuter car status. Are you interested in one of the 560 that are going to be going on sale in California only? They're available for pre-order now, though Mazda assures us in the next coming year or two, this model, as well as several other electric models, will come to the United States and be sold nationwide, hopefully with a little bit more usable range for some of us that have longer commutes. For more information on the Mazda MX-30, be sure to visit evpulse.com. And if you'd like to see more video reviews like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We'll have some very interesting stuff coming shortly. Maybe even hit that notification bell so you can be reminded right away of our latest content. Thanks for watching.